A very common error that new pilots make is on this drone, you can inadvertently disable obstacle avoidance.
Way too many new pilots stare at the screen. And you got to remember, there's a lag, first off, between the screen and the drone.
When should you start bringing the drone back? Is it okay to let the drone go all the way down to 0?
What's one really cool technique for gauging the distance between you and the obstacle? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a new season of Coastal Drone semi-weekly podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about drone regulations in 2025 in Canada.
Not just drone regulations, but basically how to get started with your drone in 2025.
Yeah.
Everything you need to know.
So we recently did a video about unboxing on Christmas morning, and this is kind of the after
The
video.
after show.
Yeah, the after show and the extended version of that. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to do a little bit more extended footage. We had Stephanie from Sky out flying for her first time, and so we're going to go through some scenes of that and talk through it, and we're going to bounce back and forth from that to some questions that Finn and I have for each other, just to talk about the drone essentials. So getting into the air as safely and legally and as reasonably quickly as possible, and kind of demystifying the process for totally new drone pilots to start your year off right and not end up with potentially a cracked frame like I just found out that I have on the Neo. So
All right.
let's get into it.
So first off, regulations.
Okay, let's talk about, and this conversation is going to be primarily for Canadians, but also we will identify as we go through the differences for our American audience as well. Thank you for joining us from south of the border. We're going to talk about the FAA regulations as well as the Canadian regulations.
That's
so
right.
that we'll try and cover most of North America. So, first question, do you need a pilot certificate or a pilot license to fly any drone?
So the answer to this question is maybe, but here's what you need to know for Canada. You need to know the weight of your aircraft. If the weight of your aircraft is 249 grams or less, like the drones you see on the table in front of you, that's the DJI Neo and the Mini 4 Pro. If this drone is 249 grams or less, you do not need a certificate to fly this aircraft. It requires no certification and no registration.
So thanks for watching our episode. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Be sure to hit like and subscribe.
However, if the drone is 250 grams or more, something like a Mavic or DJI Air, common drones that are over 250 grams, you require, at minimum, a basic certificate, a basic pilot certificate to fly this aircraft.
In Canada.
To get the basic pilot certificate, you need to write an online written exam on the Transport Canada Drone Management Portal. Now, we mentioned in Canada. In the United States, it's not about the weight. It's about what you are doing.
What your intent is.
What your intent is the operation. If you are flying for fun, you just want recreational, just want to enjoy the hobby, you need to write what is called the trust exam. Now, the trust exam is on the FAA website.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of third-party vendors that also do it.
Yes, it's very, very straightforward. It's similar to getting a boating license. You take a very short course, you write this exam. If the only thing that you need to be aware of, if the drone weighs more than 250 grams, which is 0.55 pounds in the United States, it needs to be registered on the FAA website, which can be done for $5.
Yeah.
So that, from a regulatory standpoint, if you want to get your drone in the air quickly in Canada, write your basic exam if it's over 250 grams. If you're in the United States, and just to be clear, in the United States, every single drone pilot needs to, at minimum, write the trust.
Yeah. And to clarify, so the trust is a test. It's like an edu test. I don't know how do you call it? Because you're basically learning something in a chapter, and then you do a chapter quiz. Exactly. And by the time you've done all the chapters, as long as you answer correctly throughout the process, you will get the trust certificate. So it's like a webinar/test.
Yes. And it takes, I think, about an hour to complete.
Yeah, I think so. Like that's probably a fair assessment. Because it's teaching you and testing you at the same time as the idea. Like these are the rules, these are the limitations that you have under the trust certificate, what you can and can't do. The big difference, so in Canada, the basic pilot certificate is an actual online test. There is no teaching done during that test. There is an expectation that you have knowledge going into it. Now, it's open book. You can use any non-human resource to help you get through it. there's as long as you have, like, if your Google foo is strong, you might be able to get through it quickly. But the reality is, typically these questions are structured that if you were to Google every single one of them, you wouldn't have enough time, because it's 90 minutes for the basic, and it's 60 questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you will
so
run out
then-
of time if you need to Google everything.
It's especially if you have no foundational knowledge going into it. There's a minimum passing grade, so it's 60%. Wow, I got to reset my brain on this.
Mhm.
But the questions are all based from a standard document called the Knowledge Requirement for Small Drones in Canada. There's a transport code called TP 15263. Pretty much any online drone educator like us uses that knowledge base for building their online courses and their online sample test questions, so that you have an idea of what to go into. The time commitment to getting your basic in Canada, what's realistic?
An afternoon.
Yeah, I think so. Like, if you're, and this is again coming from zero knowledge, we sell a course, the basic online course. It's about 3 hours for the online ground school, and that's to go through all the video content. And then there's sample test question banks that have questions and answers in the question, which is very similar to the trust, where you teach and test at the same time. Because there is a lot of questions in the transport exam that it wouldn't be practical to give you the full theory behind them, right? For basic drone operations.
For every single question.
Yeah,
There's
like-
like 200 to 300 questions in the GC exam bank.
Yeah. And we're up there too. But
Yes.
things like hypoxia in an advancing cold front combined.
Very cool and normal. So that's the regulatory standpoint. If you want to get your aircraft that's above 250 grams in the air, you can spend an afternoon studying for the basic exam, write the basic exam. If you're unsuccessful the first time, you just need to wait 24 hours and then you can write it again.
Yeah. And I guess what we should say here is we were pretty flippant, of course, about the micros. I recommend every drone pilot, even at the micro level, should consider getting the basic certificate, because it's going to give you that standardized knowledge that if you, let's say the Neo's not enough and the Air 3S comes along, or a Smoke and Deal on a Mavic 2 or something. And it's like, wow, I want to fly that. Well, I need to get my pilot certificate, and I've never done that. It's going to expose you to the standard operating procedures that are required. It's going to expose you to the site survey and the planning process that is required for all basic operations, even as a micro drone. Because, and I've talked about this a lot, how do you know where you can't fly if you don't know how to look for where you can't fly?
Mhm.
Right? So you don't know what you don't know as a micro drone pilot, other than don't fly like an idiot, the CARS 900-06 rule. Well, as a micro drone pilot, you potentially don't even know what I'm talking about when I say cars. It's not Tesla. It's
Beep,
yeah, it's Canadian aviation regulations.
Mhm.
So, and that's the point we're trying to get, is the foundational knowledge. The conversation should start at the basic pilot certificate. It's a low cost investment. You can take our course. You don't have to take our course. If you really want to try the test multiple times and spend a ton of time on YouTube, like now we've got 60 hours of free YouTube content out there that you can go through if you really want to, or you can take our course and be done in 3 hours. But there are options out there at the basic level. I'm not going to be naive and think there aren't, but it's definitely something that you should at least try for $5 to take the $5, no, $10 to take the test. Oh my goodness, man. Did you notice on the radio that I said 150 kilos equals 220 pounds? By the way? Yeah.
I did notice that.
Yeah.
I don't know the conversion, so you could have said anything.
Me neither, apparently. But I was live on air. So anyway, it's 330 something pounds, by the way.
Rough.
It's probably just me in denial. The $10.
Sorry, that took a second.
Self-deprecation. $10 to take the test.
Mm-hmm.
We've had people say, like, I'm just going to take the test multiple times. Sure. How many times does it take you to take the test to pass? I know of some people that have taken 5 or 6 times. Well, that's $60 they've spent on making an attempt.
For a very similar amount of price, you can
For
get
a-
a course.
Yeah, like ours is $95.
Yeah.
And you're going to get more than $60 worth of value out of that. Anyway, that's my sales pitch for now.
For now.
Let's get back into
So let's
getting started.
let's kick the regulations to the curb for a moment because that's not fun. Let's talk about some of the
and
fun
there's
stuff.
lots of existing content out there.
Yes. So let's talk about. We're going to talk about. So let's say you just unbox your drone and you need to get it set up. First things first, Ian. How on these types of aircraft, how would you check to see the battery charge level?
Are we talking still? Do we care about the size of the drone at this point? It
We're
doesn't matter.
We're just talking about how to set up an aircraft. So
Okay.
how would you check the battery levels on these?
Slide the battery into the battery compartment. Press and hold the power button to power on the aircraft.
So you can check the batteries real quick with this. This is the multi-charger.
Mhm.
So on the side there's a power button. You tap it once, it'll tell you the status of the batteries.
Got it.
So if you put that one back in, let's see if it's fully charged.
Indeed it is.
It is good to go.
On DJI branded drones, there's always a button. It might be on the battery itself. If it's a bigger drone, there'll be a button on the battery. Or on the micros, in order to save weight, they put the button on the drone itself, right? So you have, on the Mini 4 Pro, there's a button on the back. If I put the battery into the drone, I can quickly it actually will light up as soon as I put the battery in. If I tap it, you'll see the 4 lights mean that these batteries are pretty much fully charged. If I put the battery into the charging hub, did they light up? Yes,
They all did.
So as soon as you put a battery in, it lights up, or I can tap. On the more recent ones, this is a cool tip. I'm not going to say exactly how to do it because I can't remember right now, but they have a mode where it will transfer power from the least charged battery to the most charged battery down to a minimum. So like it won't discharge it fully, but you can take like 2.5 good battery or okay batteries and make one really good battery in theory. On the Neo, same thing. You tap the button once and it'll show you the level of charge. So micro drones, the batteries don't have lights because that's extra weight that's unnecessary. On the Mavic series, it's on the body of the battery because then each battery has its own full BMS built into it.
When you're getting set up, first thing, batteries fully charged. If it's your first time unboxing the drone, we recommend just charging all the batteries to full right out of the box.
Yeah. And if you're crazy and starting from scratch with like a LiPo-powered DIY drone and you just want to go full send, you're going to need a smart charger assembly to check your cells and check your voltages.
That's right. Another thing that we recommend getting set up before you go for flying is getting some sort of SD card. So what types of SD cards are compatible with this?
Yeah, so micro SD is the most common storage format for drones because of size and weight capacity. You want to make sure you have something that is V30 rated or better. And what that means is it's able to write at a sustained rate of 30 megabytes per second or better. If you don't see the V30, that's video 30 rating. There's a bunch of other small ratings like U3, A2, and all that stuff. As long as it has the V30 rating, it's going to probably have those as well. And the performance is sufficient because in order to write 4K video at full speed, you need that V30.
That's right. What size of SD card would you recommend?
I think right now the sweet spot is 256 gigs. It's like $60 Canadian on average, something like that. Like the cost per gigabyte keeps getting better and better. I'm not a huge fan of having like a 1 terabyte card in the drone because now you potentially have multiple days worth of footage on your drone or weeks or months if you don't fly frequently and you forget to offload. And then you get to the end of the card, it's like, oh, I need space. I'm just going to format. It's all good. Boom, you've lost everything. Or drone goes swimming and you've lost everything as well.
Yeah.
So don't put all your digital eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm. On this aircraft, so for this aircraft, where do you insert the SD card?
So the Mini 4 Pro, the SD card goes into the back. There's a slot. And there's actually an icon that will tell you which way to orient it. If you've bought a Neo, there is no memory card. It's only internal storage. This has 22 gigabytes of internal storage, and you can offload the footage either through the USB port directly to your phone or to your computer, or through the app using Wi-Fi.
Any other place where you'd want to put an SD card?
SD card unavailable. Storage location switched to aircraft internal storage.
All right, so the Mini 4 Pro has 8 gigs of internal storage.
Got it.
So it's good for like 10 minutes of footage.
'Kay.
It's enough for what we're doing right now, but we've talked about this already a bunch in the script. You're going to need a memory card.
Got it.
If you have a smart controller like the RC2 or the RC or the RC Pro.
When we say smart controller, it's just a controller with a built-in screen.
Yeah, so this is basically an Android tablet with sticks attached to it and its own battery. Should we talk about this real quick as well?
Sure.
Like, why is this so much better?
This will run as it is for hours, and it's also, the RC2 is an 800 nit screen, but the main difference with this between your phone, like an iPhone Pro is 1500 nits, that's for like a minute, and that's only on the brightest of days, and it will immediately start running down. This will stay at full brightness all the time.
Cool.
So on a bright day, it's really easy to see, and it's a lot easier to use. Plus, it's your drone. It's your tool that's separate from your phone.
Right.
So,
Got it.
and you have other screwy
Yeah.
things here too.
Screwy things.
So those are, one of those is for the gimbal, and one of them is for zoom.
Got it.
And this controller will work with about 5 or 6 different DJI drones. So you can buy this controller once. Mini 2, Air 3S, Air 3 maybe not.
Yeah, I think Air 3, yeah.
Probably the next Mavic. Like there's a certain, like this is the latest generation controller.
Right.
So you have two choices essentially when you buy most DJI drones. And the reality is that DJI drones are what people are buying usually for their first drone. This is the RC2, so it's the current latest generation smart controller. It is an Android tablet with sticks and controls. The gimbals on this are better than the entry level. So that's the first reason to buy this. The second reason is the performance for this is perfectly designed to run DJI software. If you have an older smartphone or tablet that you're trying to run, sometimes you run into compatibility problems and performance problems, or the battery life might not be great because it's running DJI's Fly app, which is a lot. It's a lot for the phone to run. And also it's trying to keep the screen at full brightness and communicate over USB and potentially all these things. It's just...
There are compatibility charts on the DJI website
Yeah.
for these.
Yeah. So anyway, it's one controller and you're done. Oh, and the Avata 2 as well, potentially. Sort of. Not really. But anyway, memory card into controller good. Because if you fly and drone goes swimming, you have a backup of the footage at 1080p instead of 4K at lower bitrate, but it's still a backup.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can see where it's to help you find it. You can see where exactly the
Yeah, so see where it is, or if it's a shot that was once in a lifetime and the customers needed the shot,
you at least have something.
you have something to deliver them. But you do need to make sure you set up the buffer recording to dump to the card as well.
Any other things that you should bring before a flight? Anything that's good to have on hand gear-wise?
Yeah, so one of the things is a power bank. So even if you're running the smart controller, this has got multi-thousand milliamp hour. Like both of these, not sure on this one, but on the first generation, both of these were like 18650, like big lithium cells. I think on this one, it's only one of them. Or maybe it was the RCN3, the cheap one that only had one. But anyway, you can power this over USB while you're running it to keep it fully charged. So if you're doing mapping or a long flight or something like that, and it's cold out.
Yeah, or even just so to not even get it to mapping. If you're a hobby flyer using your phone as the controller,
Yeah.
it's going to chew through your phone's battery very quickly.
And you definitely want to have, and you can potentially daisy chain even on that controller power, because it will pull power from the controller and you can power the controller from just put a brick in your pocket and run a long USB cable out to the controller.
Yes, and then also if you're flying for a long time, you can land the aircraft, take out the battery, plug the battery into the
And the multi-charger and start charging them again.
start charging them again.
So real quick about power. The USB-C is a bit of a nightmare and a mess right now. So pretty much every DJI product in the last 4 years now, I think, has been USB-C. So the connector I'm talking about. USB-C there's different, not all cables are the same, first off. So you always want to make sure you get the girthiest cable you can.
Do not buy a cable from 7-Eleven.
Yeah, gas station cables are not going to do you well. They are too thin. They don't support power delivery. And sometimes actually cables are actually smart, like they may have chips in them, or they report back their capabilities depending on the type of cables. And if they don't support the power delivery, for example, they won't do the 40 watts or 50 or higher that you need. DJI recommends a 65 watt power delivery connection at minimum. I typically buy 100 watt power adapters. We recommend one in our YouTube. It's a multi-port 300 watt. I've been using it now for about a year. No fires so far. And it's got two 100 watt ports, two 45 watt ports, and then 4 USB-A style ports as well for legacy stuff that at 30 watts each. So it's whatever that, like, it's 300 total, and it's one, like, I throw it in my bag. The idea is that it will fast charge or rapid charge, right? Because most won't. So yeah, so this spider web, this is my one cable solution, right? So when I travel, which I do a lot, I used to carry like 6 bricks, and now I have this one, and right now it's a bit of a mess because this is my daily bag. But like I said, I've got 2 100 watt USB ports. The blue ones I think are 40 watts, and then the three green ones are USB-A ports. So I USB cables go missing in my house. My wife's a photographer. I'm a photographer. We have
USB cables go missing in everybody's house.
yeah, but it's like the good ones disappear. Like I buy really good USB cables, and then I like find them plugged into my wife's iPad, but it's plugged into like a 10 watt USB-C adapter. And I'm like, this is like. So anyway, get a good charger, get a good power adapter that has really good wattage. 30 watts. So it's 100 watts times 2, 30 watts times 2, 15 watts times 2 or 3. But get a good adapter with a CSA rating, which this one might not have. And make sure you get cables that support full amperage. Like I run my laptop off this. I can charge the drone and the controller at the same time. And then I can also charge batteries, or I can charge whatever. And this was like $100, I think.
We just got a question in the chat. Can you charge your MacBook Pro with that adapter? Which probably it.
Yeah, totally. That's actually what I do. So I have the original Apple MagSafe to USB-C. Oh, that's not it.
What's the name of it as well?
It is unnamed. Model S10. It is. Now I'm not sure if I want to recommend it because I don't think it has a CSA rating.
I just bought.
Oh, it's UL listed.
Okay.
So yes, it has a CE, UL, square box, and a shape of a house, and ROHS. Does that mean it's safe? Yes. Well, it hasn't burned my house down, but I have good
I
insurance.
just bought an Anchor one, very similar to that. So probably take a look on that.
Anchor's good. I think there's some YouTube drama around Anchor though, like because they have some sister brands that have some cameras that. So I'm always hesitant to like what brands we want to promote because some of these brands are like conglomerates for other things that aren't so good. But this is like no name generic 300 watt USB-C charger.
At least we're not sponsored by Honey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you unfurl the propellers on this?
Okay.
guy here?
They're hooked. Oh yeah.
Yep, you got it.
Oh. Wow.
See, the Mini 4 Pro is cool because now you can unfold them in any order, where the previous ones you had to undo them in a certain order.
Sure.
Arms go out. Now, the Mini 3 and the Mini... Was it the Mini 4? The Mini 3 and onward, it doesn't matter what order you do this in. The Mini 2, so the Mini 4K, the current one, if you open the arms like this first, because they both opened outward at like in a horizontal manner, you would be jammed up against it. But on the Mini 4 and 3, they go the opposite direction, so it's no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what order you open
Yeah.
anything in. Why don't you put a battery in that one?
Okay.
And then, honestly, this is a thing that runs into issues with new pilots all the time. How do you turn on a DJI drone?
Oh, yes. The old tappity tap. That's a technical term, tappity tap.
Press and then press and hold the power button to power on the aircraft. Press and then press. Press.
On the back there.
And then
On the dorsal side of it. That's the belly.
this one.
Tappity tap.
Press and then press and hold the power. Press and hold.
So press once and then press again. Yeah. There you go. Now let go. So it goes through the self-test. It's going to rotate the gimbal. It's going to power everything on.
Okay.
And now on your screen, you're
All
connected.
right.
You see a video feed coming through.
I do.
So if you hold it down, it does nothing. If you tap it once, it does nothing. It just tells you what the status of the battery is. So it's DJI says tap and hold. It's not tap and hold because people like tap and hold. And no, it's tappity tap, basically.
Yes. Press once and then press and hold.
So tap, tap, and you'll see the 4 lights come on. It'll start flashing and it starts its initialization and it's
You'll hear some beeps.
Yeah.
There it goes.
and it's ready to go. No. Is it ready to fly now?
Not quite.
No. What's next?
Controller.
Okay. So, manual recommends you turn the controller on first and have the controller fully booted and ready to go before you turn the drone on in case of a flyaway situation or an auto start. And
Yes.
this is very important with DIY like drones, because you could have like your controller set to arm and you power the controller on second and it instantly sends an arm.
That's right.
Right.
So what Ian didn't, while Ian was talking, you turn on.
Tap
Yes, you turn on the controller via the same method. Press and then press again and hold.
So it's powered on. The gimbal's going to do its rotate and check, and the controller connected automatically because it's already been paired before. And
Connection.
if you buy a new drone, this should be the way it is out of the box. Like, it should be pre-paired, so you shouldn't have to go through any steps to pairing it. However, if it isn't paired, here's a quick and easy way to pair it. On the drone, you would hold down the button until it starts beeping. So what we're waiting for is it to fail, right? So we hit number 2, hit continue.
So I got some good flashing here.
Because the drone is already in pairing mode, it can't find the drone. So then it's like, well, unable to connect to aircraft? Yes. So you press unable to connect. Then it tells you to put it in pairing mode, which we already did. You hold it down and it beeps. You press aircraft beeped. Now press start pairing. Now it's going to be searching for it. And you'll see the blue lights flashing on the controller in pairing mode. There we go. It went to 4.
We're back.
The video's back on the screen. It's fully paired.
We're paired.
Okay. So you shouldn't have to do that. That's a roundabout way of showing you how you do it if you need to. So
Tappity tap.
Yes. So it's booting up. You're going to see the DJI Fly logo. It's going to connect. It's going to say, oh, there's no SD card in the drone because we didn't put one in. I'm going to tap the screen and the controller is still booting. It is an Android tablet. And this is another reason why you get a smart controller instead of using your own device, because look at that. Like, it was a little laggy trying to boot. And this is a purpose-built device. Like, this thing's not old.
No.
And this thing's significantly faster than the first generation one was.
Yes. So this controller has already been paired to this drone.
Yeah.
When you first purchase a drone, it may not be paired.
Okay.
They're
so
normally
we
pretty
kinda,
good.
We went off the rails on the video on that one a little bit. They are paired. As
Okay.
long as if you buy the Fly More combo, the controller it comes with is pre-paired. If you buy the controller like the RC2 after the fact, then you need to go through the pairing process. And
Right.
that's kind of off the rails. Or if you're buying just the drone only, like you can buy the Avata 2 with only the drone, or you can buy the Neo with only, yes, you can buy it with only the drone. Like DJI started to offer that because they recognize, hey, we're all consumer addicts and we like buying stuff, and maybe we already have the controller, so let's not sell the controller six
Yes.
times over.
The other thing that you're going to need to do to get in the air is you just need to create a DJI account and log in.
Yes. So that is actually going to be required for every new pilot that gets a DJI product. Start on the website, go in, because like if you're going to do it on this, it will walk you through how to do it on this from scratch, but
Do it on the
do it on
website.
your computer because you're going to need to remember the password.
Yes.
You're going to need to create an account with your email address. Your cell phone number is going to be needed. Probably it is at some point needed because they do require 2-factor authentication in some of the process. That account, if you're Canadian, will automatically synchronize and track your flight logs. So you'll see your experiences and where you're going, and you'll have a logbook automatically for your drone. If you're an American, that feature is now gone. They've taken away automatic flight log syncing in the States because of privacy concerns.
Now that the drone is powered on impaired, in theory, it could take off now.
Sure, why not? Let's do it. No. Yes. So in order to take off, at this point, the drone is paired, the drone is connected. I've got a video feed coming through. That's my best indication I've got a signal. I would go around the border of the screen. So starting from the center of the top of the screen, you'll see, you won't see it on here, but you can probably see it. There's a yellow box. And that yellow warning to me is saying take off with caution because there's no satellite signal because we are inside a giant Faraday cage right now. Don't want anyone listening to us. So the satellite positioning signal is weak. Hovering will be unstable. Fly with caution. Aircraft not in flight. Vision and obstacle avoidance systems are disabled. That is normal. You will always see that when you're not in flight because to run the vision system on the drones that have it, like the Mini 4 Pro, the Mavic, takes a lot of computer horsepower. Computer horsepower generates heat. These things don't have fans. It will burn the battery up and it will overheat the chip before you're ready to, like, so even as it is right now, it's getting warm. It's not hot, but it's getting warm. We have a video about firmware updates.
Yes.
If you have to do a firmware update, say you connect this to Wi-Fi, it's like, oh, there's a new firmware. For a mini series, the mini 2s were worse for this, and the mini 1s, you'd have to have like a little computer fan or like one of those little portable USB fans, just have it pointing at the drone to keep it cool, or else it might get too hot and shut down. It is transmitting video right now at 1080p resolution, 60 frames a second. That's a lot of bandwidth. Like this little guy is a TV broadcast studio right now. That takes heat. Right? It creates heat. So anyway, going around the top, batteries are at 92%. RC signal is strong. No vision, no satellites. Memory cards not in there, but that would be where I'd set it. I'd go and do all my settings. Take care of all of this stuff on the ground before you take off. Get your camera the way you want it to be. Get your settings the way you want it to be. Make sure that you are in normal mode. Another thing, first time you fly, if you use a smart controller or the regular, there's a switch in the center. What I would do is I'd move this slider to N for neutral. That change, it's going to be in neutral anyway on your first takeoff. It always is.
Okay.
It resets to neutral, so it's better to have the switch there to start with.
Okay.
Because then when you want to go to Cine to slow it down, it will actually do something. You wouldn't have to go back and then forward again on the switch. The switch in the center is going to change your modes. So CNS on the recent ones. That stands for Cine, Normal, and Sport. Put the switch into normal because when you take off, it will be in normal. The drone always reverts back to normal on your takeoff.
Sounds good. So you mentioned obstacle avoidance. How do you make sure that once it's in flight, how do you make sure that it's turned on? Or is there a setting for obstacle avoidance?
So let's turn on safety obstacle avoidance first. So we're going to go to bypass.
Got it.
Okay. And what that will do is if it sees an obstacle, it'll go around it.
What's nifty? Nifty sounds.
It's kind of like, yeah, it's smoother or more or fancier the way that it gets around the obstacle.
Okay.
So leave it in normal for
Got
now.
it.
So there's two different things you can do. Like I said, make sure the switch is in normal, but that can be overridden by in the safety settings at the top right, the 3 dots or the ellipsis, there is a setting to disable obstacle avoidance.
Okay. So that is an intentional way of disabling obstacle avoidance. A very common error that new pilots make is you can, on this drone, you can inadvertently disable obstacle avoidance. So how might one inadvertently disable obstacle avoidance?
If you slide the switch to sport, once it's in flight, it will disable obstacle avoidance. It will warn you because you'll see the obstacle avoidance icon will be red, showing that it's disabled.
But this is an inadvertent thing that people do, and when the obstacle avoidance is on, the cameras on the drone will prevent it from hitting something.
So it's in bypass mode right now. So if you keep pressing forward, it's going to try and find a way to get around.
Oh, around you.
Yeah.
You're the problem here.
Yeah.
Got it.
So it's pretending I'm a tree, basically. and you see, but if I put my arm up, it may actually fly towards my arm. Now,
No,
on
it
your
doesn't
screen,
want to.
you see how you've got that big red arc?
I do.
That's the obstacle that it sees in front of it.
Or obstacles.
Yeah. So that arc is what's in front of us.
Got it.
Now, if you turn off sport, or turn on sport, the red circle on the top right shows you that all the obstacle avoidance is off. You can
Okay.
see that it still shows the arc, and it can see Cam over there because it's beside the drone.
Yep.
Sometimes people put it into sport mode, rely on the obstacle avoidance to prevent them from hitting something, and then they hit something. So do not inadvertently disable obstacle avoidance. We recommend for your first flight to just keep it in normal mode for the
Yeah.
entire flight.
Or you can put it into cine or tripod mode. It will
Yes.
dampen the controls down. It will smooth things down. It will slow things down. If you're finding yourself too twitchy or too rammy on the controls, and this, okay, so we're into like first flight stuff.
How do you set up a return to home on this controller here?
The other one we're going to set is our return to home altitude and our maximum altitude.
Return to home, altitude 35 meters.
Yeah, so it's like 110 feet.
Okay,
So that's perfectly fine.
excellent.
And because
Max.
obstacle avoidance is on, these trees would be less of a problem, but still something.
How about this max altitude, 115 meters?
Yeah, we probably want to
Less?
bring that down. That's almost 400 feet. So let's go to like 40 meters.
40 meters.
Okay, and the maximum distance right now is at no limit. You could bring that down to 500 meters or 1,000. Okay, so it's sort of automatic. As long as you have as long as you have GPS, return to home will announce that the home point has been set either while you're on the ground prior to takeoff or just after you take off. It will announce. It depends on the software, the drone, the firmware. You can confirm it again in settings, or you can manually set it. It will be based on the point of origin for the drone. So wherever it got its first lock on takeoff.
All right. And then final question for setting up the drone. Antenna. Should you point the antenna directly at the drone?
They actually want to be tipped
Ooh.
towards the drone. They are semi-directional, so kind of like that is a good way to have them oriented. Yeah, so these are directional antennas. when you unpack the controller, it's going to be folded up like this. You want to point them perpendicular to the drone. So the emitters and the receivers are actually facing in and out. So they radiate this way, so that it's going to point in this direction to receive. So the best way to have it is if you hold the controller like this, kind of have them aimed in that general direction, so that if you look at it, the controller's like this and they're pointing upward and receiving in that general direction. That's going to be best tuned.
So ask me your question now.
What was my question?
How do I hold the controller?
How do you hold the controller, Finn?
So this is how I hold the controller. I just hold I hold it like if you're familiar with holding a video game controller, it is very similar to holding a video game controller.
Oh, it's like an Atari.
I hold it like someone would, like how you'd hold an Xbox controller. So I hold it like this with my thumbs on the sticks and my index fingers on the top buttons
Or the wheels.
or the wheels, like how you would hold a game controller. This is not the only way to hold a controller. How Ian holds the controller is he actually holds it with his index fingers and his thumbs both on both sticks. This is for a little bit more fine control. If I'm doing a shot where I need more fine control, I will move my index fingers to
Yeah, you'll find a lot of FPV racers also use thumb and finger. Well, it depends. I guess it's however you're comfortable.
Yes.
But I do find it's easier to be precise by pinching the sticks.
So if I'm being precise, I will pinch. If it's just like if I'm flying to the area, I will just hold it like a video game controller.
Yeah.
The buttons on the top here, the right one, the white one, will take a photo, and then the one on the left, the recording pepperoni, will start recording.
And that's on the RC2.
This is on the RC2, yeah.
On the N, it's a little different. The RC2 has two buttons on the back of it as well. So there's two custom buttons underneath your ring fingers. and then the two wheels, one of them is for adjusting the gimbal up and down, and the other one is for digital zoom.
Yes. It's only digital zoom. It's not a real zoom.
Some drones, the wheel might do pan as well. It depends on if the drone has that capability. Some of the Mavic series, some of the Air series might have that. The Mini does not.
Okay. So now we've taken off. Where should your eyes be?
In any
Do I look at the drone or do I look at the screen?
So when you're just getting started and when you're close to it like this, absolutely look at the drone.
'Kay.
Because you want to be able to judge distance from the drone to obstacles and your face and everything else.
This
Well-
screen has a lot of information. Should I do this?
Well, if you want to hit a tree, sure. Why not?
Yeah, so why is it a good idea to keep your eyes on the drone as much as possible?
Yeah, so the rule of thumb I have is, and this is, we're talking about all drones right now. We got an email. All drones, you want to be able to navigate between maintaining visual line of sight of the drone and using the telemetry to be aware of where your drone is and what it's doing in its health. Not talking about video for a second. If you are just taking off, just landing, or in close proximity to your landing area or close proximity to a potential obstacle, you need to be looking at the drone. Don't be looking at your controller unless your controller is adding to your situational awareness. It should not be your primary thing. Way too many new pilots stare at the screen. And you got to remember, there's a lag, first off, between the screen and the drone. So if you're flying towards something, there is a lag. It's usually microscopic, but it is there. And then you're also processing something from the small window. So your depth perception isn't there unless you look at the drone and have a good idea of where the drone is relative to it. It's going to come from processing like that movement and change. It's not going to come from looking up, looking down, looking up. Oh, am I that close to that tree? I don't know. Look down. Oh, I hit the tree. Okay, never mind. So it's
Keep your eyes on the drone.
keep your eyes on the drone. If you need to fly with the controller, so either you're taking a critical shot or you need to look through the screen, or your FPV where you only have goggles, you need a visual observer, someone
right.
that can watch the drone and communicate with you verbally in real time what the drone is doing. What's a good tool? If you're working with a visual observer, what's one really cool technique that I'll probably have to tell you the answer to, but I want you to talk about it, so I'm going to ask you first, for gauging the distance between you and the obstacle?
So you can use known points of distance.
Yeah.
If you're so part of learning to fly and learning to be a competent drone pilot is when you're doing a survey of a site, which is legally called a site survey. You can get distances. So before you go flying, you can look and see, okay, if I plan to take off from this field, there's a road on this side of the field. How far away from the field is the road? You can measure on Google Maps and see, this field is 130 meters away from where I'm going to take off.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly it. The other part of it is I picked this up from doing a flight review with someone once that worked in film, and your visual observer should give you a countdown based on the progress of the drone. So if I'm telling you you're 10 meters away from an object, don't worry about distance, because then I need to think about distance while I'm looking at the screen. Just give me a countdown on
5,
time.
4. It's like if you've ever had to help someone back their fifth wheel into a very tight
And they do
camping
like
spot,
this.
and you go like that. Do that, but verbally.
Yeah. So you're basically saying, okay, by 1, you need to stop,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then in their mind, they're like, okay, I'm progressing at this rate. If they say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it's like the verbal landing call-out system on an airliner.
Yes.
Right? If the 500, the 50, 40, 30, 10 comes up really fast, it's like you're going to pancake the landing.
Yes.
So that's the same idea is what we're talking about.
So let's say that you're doing the flight and maybe something's going wrong and you need to bring the drone back. We mentioned return to home before. Ian, how could you activate return to home?
So here's actually, why don't you do this? Start a return to home. So there's 2 different ways you can do this.
Yep.
The easiest is to just press and hold on the home button.
Press and hold.
And your controller volume is turned off because that should have made a noise.
Well, I think I have it put on silent.
Okay.
That'll do it.
So,
Okay, here it comes.
and you've got an augmented reality showing its path. That's what that green bar is.
What's the second way? The screen?
Yeah, so that one on the screen there, the land, that's the return to home button.
Okay.
And there you can say land immediately or return to home. We want to return to home, not. And you have to hold it down. Yeah, it gets a green circle.
Got it.
There, now it's going to draw, same thing, it's going to draw a path of where it's going to fly.
Right.
and it will show you where it's going to land, which is a relatively new feature.
So I guess if you saw an obstacle, you could stop it.
Well, in theory, it's going to tell you how it would avoid that obstacle.
And it always does this, like vertical home? Oh,
Um,
no, come back.
It's okay. It's not always. It will do something called a fancy return to home. And it should eventually show you, a little augmented reality drone of where it's going to land.
That's so cool.
So it's going to land on the grass right in front of us.
Do we want that?
No, so you can tap the red stop or pause button to cancel the landing. Depending on your controller, the quickest, easiest way to do it on the DJI, you have the home/pause button on the RC2. It may look something like that, or it'll be a stop or a pause. There might be multiple buttons, but it's you hold down this button and you'll hear a doo-doo-doo, and then it'll start beeping constantly while the drone is in autonomous flight mode because it is now coming back to its point of origin. So the other way to do it, turn the controller off. So if your controller is set to default configuration, it will return to home if it loses its command and control.
Yes,
link.
we wouldn't recommend just turning.
Don't just turn it. But that's like
Yes.
The idea is don't panic if you haven't changed the setting. There's 3 modes you can have return to home or loss of link configured to, but by default it will return to home.
Yeah, and we recommend keeping it in the default setting for most operations.
Yeah, the times you would want to do it otherwise would be if you're over water or working with moving platforms.
Yes. So, we share the skies with a lot of things. Something that we share the skies with is a bird. If you are seeing bird activity, what are some good best practices for birds?
Avoid, definitely see and avoid. Depending on the birds, some of them are going to be aggressive. If it's a bird of prey, there's a good risk that your drone will get taken out. If they're feral birds, what are seagulls? Carrion? No, that's dead animals. They're nuisance birds.
Yes.
They will joust or like bluff charge your drone, but they won't necessarily attack it, but they're going to ruin your shot.
Yes, we actually have a whole video on wildlife encounters and wildlife avoidance.
Yeah, so just avoid them.
Just avoid them.
If there's like this time of year, well, especially in the fall, tons of eagles in the lower mainland. And like they're protected species. Don't fly in your nest, don't fly near them, don't antagonize them. They're probably nesting. Like you don't want to be responsible for that.
Yeah. And then, so you're doing the flight, no matter what you're doing. On screen, you're going to see a real-time percentage of your battery.
Yep.
At what percent is a best? When should you start bringing the drone back? Like, is it okay to let the drone go all the way down to 0?
Battery life. What are we doing for battery life?
54%.
Okay, so you can see, let's do like a distance flight.
Sure.
That circle, if you press on it,
Yep.
that'll give you a bit more info about your battery. So you have 10 minutes until return to home, 12 until it's going to force you to land, and 15 until it's at 0.
Okay.
And you never want to run the battery down to 0 because it's really hard on it.
Okay.
So your first flight, don't go below 50%, right? Like we're talking about these batteries now are in the neighborhood of like 20 to 30 minutes or more on average. That's a lot of flight time. If you go out for 10 minutes and you mess around and you've survived that first 10 minutes, that's probably good to call it a day and come back. And just keep that narrow window so you've got a ton of buffer, because if it's cold and your battery is below 50%, it might actually be a steeper curve to discharge than you think because the battery's cold. The battery indicator on the drone will tell you how far you can fly before you have to return home. And the farther away the drone is from your point of origin, the return to home point will be at a higher percentage level because you will need more energy to get back.
It will also tell you in minutes how many minutes you have remaining
Exactly.
estimated, but don't rely on that estimate.
Yeah, and you can tap on the battery icon in DJI Fly, which is the consumer app, and it will tell you how many minutes and seconds until return to home, how many minutes and seconds until forced landing, and then how many minutes and seconds until battery's toast.
Yes. Normally, what I tell people is the absolute minimum that you should be at before you bring the drone back is 30%.
Yeah.
Like I see 30 on my controller, I see 29 on my controller, it's coming back.
And if you're right over the point of origin, you can fly it down to 10% or 15%. Flying it down to 0, a full discharge is not good for the long-term health of the battery.
No. Also, the drone will automatically land itself at that point. It will try to not crash itself.
You can, you can fight it. Like if you want to fully discharge the battery, which that is a part of doing the annual service. Like you want to do a full discharge, but you shouldn't be doing it routinely. I'm just looking to see what the battery temperature is while this thing's sitting here. 49.4 degrees Celsius.
That's not bad.
So it's getting warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, luckily for the drone then, that's the end of our script.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it off to give it a break.
Yeah. So
Yeah, because it was up to 49.7 there.
this is how you can get started on your first flight in drones. Everything you needed to know to get that drone in the air. Just to recap important things: charge your batteries, set up a DJI account,
Yeah.
and fly somewhere out of the way.
Yeah, and just a couple quick other things to interject in before we fully close it out. When you're flying, so we talked about putting it into cine mode. We talked about maneuvering. Focus on how you interact with the sticks. One of the things I see a lot of new pilots do is they get like really rammy with the controls, and they'll do full deflection with the sticks in any direction. It's like, oh, I want to go forward. Click. It's not a game controller. It's not going to dampen the controls for you.
They're very sensitive.
Yeah.
They are more sensitive than you think they're going to be if you've
Yeah.
never flown one before.
Yeah, and so what'll happen is if I push full forward, some of these can fly like 60 miles an hour now. So
Yes.
they will go full forward.
It's like when Teslas first became a thing and they kept crashing into buildings
That's
because
because people are ramming on the throttles.
because they've got pretty good torque, they would
Yeah.
accidentally put it in drive instead of reverse, and then
Sudden acceleration.
exactly.
Audi went through that as well in the 80s.
These are more sensitive than you think.
So think about what you want to do. Add a little pressure. That's why I do recommend like putting your fingers as kind of like guards in any direction, because you can still roll the gimbals and do all this stuff with your middle fingers instead. So that's why I shoot this way. But even if you do, all you just need to do is just the nice thing about the RC2 is it's got these pointy bits on the sticks. So it's nice, got solid grip, and you just push a little bit. With the N series, the cheaper version, there's spherical gimbals and there's more back pressure when you push in any particular direction. So it's got like more starting force, and you just have to think about that. And I find whenever I use that controller, my flight is jerkier. My yaw moments, like you have to retrain how you fly, because it's like you've got friction on the controls. So just small movements, and then your first things that you should focus on are if you can master the orbit manually right away, or focus on that. So an orbit is fly the drone in a full 360-degree circle around a center point of origin like this table, and have the drone fly in a manner that it's rotating left as it slides to the right.
That's right.
So the control stick maneuver for that is right stick sliding to the right,
Both in or both out.
both in or both out. Not in and down to the corner, but in and out sideways. And we'll do an overlay showing which way that is and an example shot. But if you master the right and left orbit, because
You're now better than 90% of hobby drone flyers.
yeah, and you can. The point of it is though, yaw ruins videos. So you need like mastering how much yaw is needed to make the shot orbit, because you can string one orbit, half an orbit, and like do like a sideways Immelman or something like that. Like the idea of like orbiting and then an S, split S. Anyway, if you can master the pressure required to balance how much you're sliding to the right with how much you're rotating to the left at the same time, it's going to dramatically improve your shot. Of course, there's tons of automation. You can draw a box over someone and just press orbit and it will do it. But
If you can do it manually,
we're still at that level where manual flying skill is critical.
can it do a barrel roll?
No. Wow, this one can. The Neo can with the right controller. But that's another episode.
Yeah.
One question in the chat as well I'll just pose. Do you want to just quickly touch on rates? Like if you find it too sensitive?
Yes. So there's curves that you can apply Let me see if I can bring up the screen real quick in here. So, it might not let me because gain and expo tuning. Okay, it won't let me until I turn the controller back on. So I just want to show you real quick what it looks like. But so the DJI RC2 and pretty much every DJI controller has gain and expo control adjustments. And what that means is exponential curve is going to look like an exponential curve. So if I slide a control input, one would then potentially be half up to a certain point, and then it doubles at a certain point. So it's like an S-type curve, or you can have it be the opposite, where it's more at the beginning and less at the top. So it limits your or dampens your control. So what it is you go into settings and you go into controls and you go to gain and expo tuning, and then you can see first off like maximum speed. So I can say like I don't want to fly any faster than 12 meters per second in normal, or maybe in sport I want to fly no faster than 16, or I could adjust that.
And you can actually adjust it in sport and say that in sport you don't want to fly more than 2 meters.
Yeah, you can totally do that. And then you also have the gain and expo curve, and you can see. So like if I want to have my yaw be less and I want to dampen it, I can turn it down. And what that means is at the center, a little is a little instead of a little being a lot, right? So it applies an exponential change to it. So if I'm the kind of person that really just can't master the thumb control for yaw, and I really want to dampen only my yaw, I can do that with adjusting the expo curve. So now the drone is going to take a lot more stick input for it to make a movement. So yeah.
Good question. Cam, any other cues from the CH?
Yeah. Have we done a video, or are we going to do a video on annual servicing of batteries?
I don't think we've got one, and we should.
No, we don't have something on annual service.
Yeah. How to throw your drone in the dishwasher. No. But yes, well, we talked about it a little bit on an episode where I talked about retiring the Mini 1. But I didn't film the discharge process. It's kind of like watching paint dry.
Yes, but it's something that we should take a look at.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else?
That's it. I know that we didn't want to go too into the whole brand thing for the battery or for the like charger things, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it has a brand.
Did you get it on Amazon?
Yeah, I did. It's like an Anchor clone.
Okay.
Yeah. Temu. $65. Yes, this is the one. It's Mavisen. USB 300 watt C fast charger port, 7 port fast charging station, dual PD PPS 100 watt for iPhone, laptop, etc., etc.
Awesome.
It's currently on sale for $65 Canadian.
Very catchy name.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a white version as well.
Very
if you want
cool.
White.
I think we should hit the road.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, you can hit like and subscribe. We'll be putting out a podcast every 2 weeks in 2025. If there's a topic that you want to hear specifically about, please drop us a line and we can take a look at that. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day.
We'll
Cheers.
see you again. Bye.
Bye-bye.